welcome back to another episode of Conversations, the show where we have conversations. And why do we have conversations? Because conversations give us a space to explore our thoughts, to learn new things, and maybe, just maybe, do some things differently than other people are doing. Which is why we're a little late here today because we got distracted talking about my headphones, which might come up as part of the conversation today. So, for those of you who are new to the conversation series, welcome. For those of you who are not new to the conversation series, welcome. We are excited to have everyone here today. And although this might visually look like a conversation between two people, this is a conversation for all of us. So today we're going to be talking about igniting sales potential. Whew. And we could talk about this for a very long time, which is kind of how we do on this show. We love to open a can of worms. But I know that there are lots of people who have lots of different mindsets about what sales is. And so if you are joining us in the conversation today live, for one, say hello, let us know that you're here. And two, I would love to hear some of your current perspectives on what sales looks like, what sales feels like. And what we're going to be talking about today is just how we might be able to ignite something a little bit more meaningful for people than that old school used car salesman. Which is, it makes me feel kind of sad even to use that analogy because there are some used car salesmen who are really great and are like living into their best lives and their best potential. But we're going to talk about some of those things that maybe pull us away from doing that and some of the things that we can focus on that can bring us into a really productive mindset when we think about sales. So like all conversations on this show, this isn't just me talking to myself about things, even though I can be a good devil's advocate for myself. I have the wonderful Norman Poon joining me today. So Norman, before we get started, can you give everyone a little bit of an introduction to you and why sales is your jam?
For sure. So funny enough, I mean, I've always seen myself as a kind of an odd duckling. So because I'm an HR guy by training, but when you put me up against all my some of my HR peer, I'm always look like the odd duckling up from them. I'm high energy. I love dealing with people, and why sales my jam? Because everyone needs it. Um, in many ways, I like to joke I'm third generation sales guy. My dad was a sales guy. My grandfather was a sales guy. We just sold different things. But sales runs in our blood. I mean, everything's about sales. I mean, even in HR, when I go and coach candidates and through the whole job process, sales. That's what it is. It's a sales and marketing process when they're looking for a job. It's if they can see themselves in us how they position themselves and how they sell themselves, that's a whole process of the job search process. And same thing for clients is how do we help our clients sell and how do we help our clients stand out?
Mhm. Okay, so something you said, Norman, is
For
that
sure,
sales is in your blood, in
for
your
sure.
family. And so this is one of the mindsets that I see quite often when it comes to sales. That there's some people who are just good at selling, and there's some people who are just not good at
Right.
selling. So, what would you say to those people who think they could never, even from like a career perspective, think they could never be quote unquote good at sales?
I think that's a fallacy. I think it's a mindset. I'm more than happy to tell you about one of my best salespeople here. She is your stereotypical introvert. Doesn't get any more introvert than she does. Never done sales in her life. She was a journalist in her past life. Came to Canada, and now she's selling for us. Amazing sales. Um, what made her different? She cares. She's tenacious. She's hardworking. That's it. She For a top salesperson, she does not remotely come to the fast talker, high energy salesperson that people probably see me as a stereotypical salesperson a lot more than they'll see her. But as I said, introverted, generally quiet, but she cares. She's tenacious. She's hardworking. She's literally a dog on the bone. I mean, she will. If you said call me back in 2 months, she'll call you back in 2 months, and that's really what it is. Sales is the high, people who do well in sales, especially selling high end stuff. they just care and they're tenacious, and that's really what it is overcoming the fear of failure. And here we celebrate success because frankly in sales, if we hammer each and every day on failure, we will go crazy because we fail.
We're mostly failing.
Yeah, I would like to. I wanted to. I'm just trying to figure out. Do I fail 90% of the time each day, or do I fail 95% of the time each day?
Right.
But in various ways. But again, but we focus on the success because again, but it's a mindset. A lot of people can't get themselves off that failure mindset. It's like when I talk to people, it's like celebrate your success. What did you do right? Every step is a success. Success isn't just one thing. Success is multiple steps. You make the call. It almost feel like sometimes teaching children. But again, you make the call. Good job. You send an email. Good job. You made it through gatekeeper. Good job. You talked to the decision maker. Good job. You got a second meeting. Good job. I mean, to me, that's but again, but sales is that whole process. You kind of have to build on that, and you kind of build on that, build on that, build on that, and then if you do all those steps right, even the worst salesperson in the world, I can guarantee you, will be successful.
Mm. And you won't be the worst salesperson in the world for long because
Correct. Correct. Absolutely
yeah.
correct.
And I think from so you brought up the word tenacious a couple
Yes.
of times, and I think when I look at it from, I like to look at it from the success perspective as well. But I think in sales, a lot of people feel the failure, right?
Yes.
I made 50 calls and one person answered the phone. That means that like this is a small percentage, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, one person answered the phone today. Or I have a
You
client
made
I'm
50
working with
calls. To be
right
honest,
now.
you made 50 calls. You didn't hang up after the first one.
And from the tenacity perspective, is there's a shocking amount of people who aren't doing that.
Correct.
Right? There's a shocking amount of people who aren't sending connection requests on LinkedIn. There's a connection amount of people who get connected to people and then pretend they don't exist.
Right.
There's a shocking amount of people who won't pick up the phone. There's a shocking amount of people who won't send a follow-up email because they don't want to bug you. Right? And you're like, I don't know about you, Norman, but when I buy things, usually, especially big ticket things, I don't know that I'm super prepared to buy it like right in this instant. But if I have somebody who I know cares about helping me and is willing to put in the work to build that relationship and follow up when I ask them to, then like that shows that that person is being human.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm still in the age demographic where humans build relationships with humans. And it is these things about just like, hey, I have this one lady who I've been talking to for literally years. and and it's not just because I'm hoping one day she's going to become a client, but it's because I've put so much into this relationship now that I'm legitimately curious. Like, what are you doing? How is it going? She ended up going back to school instead of like doing what she was looking to in her career, which is fair, right? Like, and
Right.
figuring that out. And there's that innate like level of caring that I
Yes.
think is, and this is not just useful in sales, it is useful in many things. But let's talk a little bit, Norman, about like someone's unique brand of caring,
For sure.
because I feel like you and I, we have different
Right.
personalities,
For
right?
sure.
So we innately have different ways that we might show somebody that we care about them.
Right.
So from a sales perspective, a sales training perspective, how important is it to be able to like ignite and celebrate those unique things or unique ways people show that they care?
I think that's really important. I think unless you're selling a highly disposable product,
A bag of chips.
a bag of chips, a pack of I like use a pack of gum, but again, but you're absolutely correct. Highly disposable product where people don't care, um, it doesn't matter. But again, you celebrate some personality. It's people, but I'm a still believer that people buy from people that they like. Um, People that care and people that they trust. And trust, again, we talk about branding here, and we probably talk about branding a bit too as well, is the trust in the brand, trust in the person. Am I perfect? No. Have I screwed up? Plenty of times. Have I pissed customer off? More than I care to acknowledge. I wish I'm up here and tell you I have never pissed a customer off or I've never screwed up in my life. I'm that good of a salesperson, that good of an account manager that I've never pissed a account manager off, pissed a client off or screwed up an account. No, I wish I could say that, but I can't. But I mean, ultimately, is trust. I mean, one story that my dad always loved telling me is about he was managing a sales team, and there was two guys on the sales team. Um, One guy again is your stereotypical sales guy, polished, good talker, smooth. And his other sales guy, you look at him and you just feel sorry for the guy. You just look at him as like, oh man, this guy just, you mean, how is this guy going to pay the bills? And he's just probably going home to thing. The irony is, the guy who you feel sorry for is the one who consistently delivered the fatter margin for my dad because people inherently trust him. While the smooth talker, the polished guy, is the one who always go to my dad asking for exemption to cut the margin because customer always feels that you know what, this guy's too good. There's probably a few more percentage that I can squeeze out of this guy, and this guy always had to go to my dad and ask, hey, in order for me to close the deal, I need to cut my margin. While the other guy who you feel sorry for, you just inherently trust, consistently deliver the fatter margin. I mean, it's just trust. I mean, the other guy just people just they like him, but they just don't trust him.
Well, do you think that maybe this comes down to what people care about at the end of the day? Because
I
what
think
I'm
so.
feeling is like there's probably the one guy who really cared about solving the problems and helping the customer to do what they're trying to do, and there's one guy who's trying to sell things.
Yeah,
Right? So what I care about is selling things versus I care about helping these people, and people can feel that,
they can.
right? And I mean, we're here live on LinkedIn, and I know every single person watching this, I counted them because I knew this episode was coming up today. I have received 8 in mails today about how people can help my business. You're not connected to me, you don't know me. And I did a fun experiment because I love to experiment. Literally, I got 2 of them, and the content of them was exactly the same.
Wow.
So I didn't look very closely to see if they were like representing the same organization or whatever. But the second one I received, I sent a message back and I was like, just so you know, I got this identical message earlier today. So if what you're trying to sell me is like building trust and rapport, I don't think it's working. And you know the response I got? I mostly expected not to get a response, but you know the response I got?
No.
Cut and paste next message, right? Completely ignored the fact that that's what I said in my message and just sent me the link to the videos and here's where you can book a meeting. And like, dude, you can't tell me that is showing that you care for a person. And the reason why it makes me so angry is I don't think that human is a bad human. I think they've been given bad sales processes that filter out their level of caring, or maybe numbers they have to hit that don't allow for them to show up and care about their work. Is that something that you see that happens a lot too,
I see
Norman?
that all the too. I mean, I think I like actually one thing which is kind of leads nicely deep before I answer your question. I think it's your experience. I experienced the same thing that you experienced because I mean, there'll be people who send, and I'll send them a question. Say, hey, can I help you with this because your message sucked, or and then it's just like they ignore my message, and they to your exact point, go on to the next sequence. It's like, well, yeah, okay, obviously, it's not even. I don't even think it's a person. It's an automated sequence, unless someone hits the link, so the sequence just doesn't stop.
Right.
And I think I want to show your audience how we kind of got to know each other. I can't remember. You sent me an invite or I send you an invite. I can't remember who sent
I
who,
don't
but
know.
it doesn't really matter. And then
Somebody sent a connection request to the
yeah,
other one.
and I think ultimately I think was like, hey, do you want to go for coffee? And that became that whole thing. It's like, I mean, but I found I'm not sure about you, Tracy, but some people get highly offended that they feel selling is a one-way street. They can pitch to me,
Right.
but if I ever turn the table on them and say, hey, I think I might have something that you might be interested in. They all of a sudden get highly offended or they ghost me. It's like, wait a second here. This isn't how this game is played. You mean
Sales is a relationship game. It's not a
exactly?
one-way street.
I mean, I'm giving you an opportunity to pitch to me as long as you give me an opportunity to pitch to you. To me that's a collaboration that's mutual, what I believe to be mutually beneficial, and it's friendly, it's fun. You mean you build a network, and sometimes it works, many times it doesn't, but hey, you come up with knowing, you're learning a little bit more
Mhm.
about the world, and to me that to me is a win already. If I go into a sales meeting with someone and I learn a little bit more about the world, it's a win already, because I don't know when that little nugget I might pull on my back and apply in a future meeting. But to me, that's a win already.
Yeah. Well, and this is an interesting place to chat too because mm, so I have like one thing I consider a sales call.
Right,
um, so I have coffee chats. I have
right,
coffee chats. If I have a coffee chat with you and I think it's worth time to have another conversation that's not business related, I have connection chats.
yep,
And then I have discovery calls. Discovery calls are for like, hey, we've talked about this in either a coffee chat or a connection chat. And I think like this thing that I do might be useful for you. Let's talk about it. But even my discovery call is not like, I don't embody it like a discovery call. Like for me, or like a sales call, because it's about discovery. It's called a discovery call because it's about discovery. So it's me discovering about you, what are your pains, you discovering about me, how I do business, and the types of packages I have. And a sales call only comes after we've had a discovery call and you think there's something you want to talk about and then we're going to be talking about transacting. And for me, like those like sales calls are like 20 minutes
yep,
because we've done all of the rapport building, the trust building. I've given you references. You've talked to my references, right? So I actually I don't spend a lot of time on quote unquote sales calls.
yep,
And my close rate is super high because I only have sales calls with people I know who are ready to buy and have enough
exactly.
details to actually buy. And so it was interesting because I was talking to a friend the other day about this in terms of like, I remember being in corporate and all of the things we were supposed to do on a discovery call, right? Like you're supposed to build rapport and figure out the budget and figure out who the decision maker is and like all of these things. And I was like, is that possible? Because now my call is for multiple purposes, right? My call is to build rapport, but now rapport isn't the primary deliverable because I got to figure out if there's a budget. Well, now, like that is, if I don't know you and I'm asking you a budget question, what's your likelihood of being truthful in answering my budget question? Probably not super high. And so when we talk about the kind of like sales funnel, Norman, and looking at like how we can ignite more potential in that funnel, how important is it to have like specific deliverables as you go through and not have too many deliverables from one thing?
We very much believe in the same philosophy of sales. Um,
Hence why
and
we're on this show together.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
why.
Um, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I think for a lot of salespeople, they make the same mistake as you. Sorry, not as you, as what you just illustrated.
Right.
Um, I mean, what I teach my sales team is, if the client, if the prospective client spends eight talk to you for 80% of the time, that is a brilliant. You have done an excellent job on that sales call, because obviously the client is pouring their hearts out to you. You mean you have absolutely built that rapport, and you mean, and we might not have even talked about budget. We might not even talk about cost. We might not talk about anything. But to us, that is a brilliant sales call, because the client obviously trusts. It goes back down to trust, and it goes from there. So I mean, if the client's talking, and I can't remember who said this quote, but those who are interesting are interested, and by being interested in what our client has to say, it makes both of us, it makes my team far more interesting. And the irony is that the client's going to walk away from that meeting thinking that is the one of the most engaging chat they ever had with someone, even though they talk for 80% of the time.
Okay, so I just this is precisely my experience of my first date with my now husband. Is like we hung out for 3 hours, and I thought my experience of this was that we were having such a great conversation. And he's asking strategic questions and all of these things. But in his perspective, he was like, you talked like 80% of the time. And I was like, oh, I didn't even notice I was talking 80% of the time. It like felt balanced. But that's because I feel like humans have an innate desire to be listened to,
Yeah.
right? And if I'm coming on, this is why I don't even really like the concept of a sales call, because if I'm coming on a call specifically to talk to you and I don't have any intention of listening, I just have pitch, presentation, what have you, then I tell my clients all the time, like, how do you even know that people want to talk about that at this point in their relationship with you? And now you're just giving them information they don't want, which is not going to move the sale closer to being done. It's going to move the sale farther away from
Yeah.
being done.
I think dating is a brilliant analogy to sales, to most things. I mean, let's talk about those in-mails and invites. I always compare it. Not saying I have to experience it because it's beyond my time, but I always compare LinkedIn to Tinder. Maybe your audience can contradict me, but I have never heard of a single successful person on Tinder where you swipe right, I think swipe right, and then the first question you ask the other person is, "Will you marry me?" And the other person said, "Yes." Brilliant. I mean, no
And
one has ever done that, but yet on LinkedIn, it's
right.
perfectly acceptable to accept the invite and say bye.
Well, I guess this is the thing that boggles my mind, because I actually think most people, if like they were asked that question, would you date somebody, or even if you look at it from a LinkedIn connection perspective, would you marry someone that you just connected with on LinkedIn? Like, no, you
No,
probably wouldn't. I don't know anybody who would do that. So if we wouldn't do that, this was always like my conversation with people when it came to marketing, because people are like, I don't know anything about marketing, right? And I'm like, do you buy things? Yeah, yeah. Yes, we all buy things. We are all consumers. Therefore, we know what we like and we know what we don't like. And so if someone out there, some coach or guru or whatever, is being like, this is the way to do it, and you're like, I would never do it that way, but okay, I'm gonna do that because that's how I'm gonna make $1 million. Then like you don't have that alignment. You just took the caring right out of it, right? And
exactly.
unless we're looking at, like, if I looked at it again, I actually think LinkedIn, I'm gonna straight up say this. I think you should take away InMail. I don't think InMail does anything good. I don't think it helps anyone.
A- And you know what? And this is where, and you know about caring, LinkedIn, as great of a platform, LinkedIn. Sorry, let me take a step back because LinkedIn as a platform sucks. As great of a, I'm sorry, LinkedIn. If I'm sure I'm going to get canceled by LinkedIn shortly here after this call. Um, LinkedIn as an idea, as a service provider, as an offering is great, but you probably get this as well, Tracy, that if it doesn't really ever feel like people at LinkedIn or people who design LinkedIn use their own product. It's like, why would you do this? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. Anyone who has ever everyone on there has any power use of LinkedIn would know this makes absolutely no sense. I can only assume that people at LinkedIn should be power use of their own product, but it
I
doesn't. I mean,
mean, drink your own Kool-Aid. I think so, but
exactly. I mean, there's two features on LinkedIn that mind boggles me. You talk about InMail. It's like InMail is so expensive. Well, beside the first 10 that everyone bombs you with, I swear. Um, but beside InMail, I mean, LinkedIn now has this feature of you mean focus and other or whatever that they now have this two mailboxes for you,
mm.
but every single email goes into other. So if I was LinkedIn, I'm charging my client an arm and a leg to charge email just so that I can get so that every one of my paid email from LinkedIn to LinkedIn goes into your equivalent of spam.
Junk mail. Yeah.
It's like, wait a second here. I just gave you a lot of money just so I can have my mail go into spam. Thank you very much, LinkedIn.
Well, and I think, this is the problem, right? Because people demand the feature, right?
Yeah,
Like, I'm getting spammed by these emails. I don't want them in my regular inbox. My regular inbox is for my peeps where I'm having like legitimate conversations. I don't want those in there. So I get that from the perspective. But really, what the conversation could have been was if people hate in mail so much, they don't want to see them in their inbox, is it a good feature for us to sell to people? Because I think in sales and marketing, I see this a lot with like how the automations are fixing problems,
yes.
right? Like we'll let people reach out to people that they're not connected to. Okay, what's the use case behind that? Because if I don't know you, but I want to know you, why might I want to know you? To sell you something. Right? Okay, so they're going to be used for sales. But like I think I sent an in-mail once because it was actually to a person who I knew, but they wouldn't connect, like they wouldn't accept my connection. So I like finally sent them an email. But I was like, okay, it's fine. But when people are sending like 100 in-mails a day, what is that a good use case? And if it's not a good use case, why do we make it available?
That's exactly it. I'm not sure. There's a second function on LinkedIn. I think they got rid of it. It was actually a brilliant feature that they never quite thought it through. Many years ago, LinkedIn has this proximity locator for you to network. Do you remember that?
Oh, no, I don't.
So what happens that you open up your in LinkedIn, you open up this feature, you turn on this feature, and it tells you who within how many meters of you are open to networking, which I think is brilliant. Because if I'm sitting in a bar or in a restaurant all by myself and I'm bored out of my mind, and there's someone who's also bored out of their mind wants to chat, hey, that's the purpose of the feature. Now, again, where I believe LinkedIn never use their own product or they don't have a life, is in order for that feature to work, and this sounds going to sound the dumbest thing ever. When I tell you it sounds dumbest, and yet someone never pointed it out to them because it was there for many years. It wasn't like a 6 month test and then they got rid of it. It was there for a few years before they got rid of it. In order to use that feature, A, it was extremely hard to find.
Mm.
B, in order for me to connect with someone, I had to have I have to stay on that screen and only that screen. I can't leave that screen.
Uh,
And the other person has to also stay on that screen. So who would stay on a screen with nothing? I mean, there's no alert, no nothing. So
right.
to me, it's like, wait a second here. This doesn't work. You didn't think this through. Like if I'm sitting in a restaurant or I'm in an airport and I'm looking for someone to chat with, I will probably turn the feature on. If someone's also turned it on, they will probably proximity locate say, "Hey, you want to chat?" I say, "Sounds good." But but I'm not going to I'm not just going to stare at that blank screen forever and ever and ever, hoping someone also happened to stare at that blank screen forever and ever and ever, hoping so. But again, it's like this whole feature. It's a brilliant feature, yet obviously no one at LinkedIn ever thought, "Wait a second here, this doesn't
Yeah,
make
and
sense."
who leaves just one thing open when you're trying to like kill time, right?
Exactly. So did no one at LinkedIn ever kind of thought this? I mean, maybe they thought of maybe initially when they had some others decide, but someone must have used it before and said, "Hey, this doesn't quite work."
Yeah, and I feel like maybe if you were at like a networking event and you wanted to do that, you would leave it open. But
But then you'd
regardless,
be
I
at a
think this.
networking event already. Like if I
Yeah,
was at your networking event, you wouldn't tell all your networking people to
right.
turn that screen on.
Turn
It's
your
like,
screen on and then spend all your time behind the screen instead of talking to these people. But this is a really great example because it might sound like we kind of went off on a tangent there. But when we look at something like that as an example and we look at our sales system or our connecting system, like if you're in the market for like you're changing careers or things like that, it's same use cases, right? If we are reaching out to people and we haven't really thought through like what is the other person's experience of receiving this, and how easy. I always say the like number one secret with marketing is to get people to say yes. Okay, so how can I make them offers that they can say yes to, that it feels easy to say yes? And like I'm just straight up deleting InMails. Right? And that is not an easy thing to say yes to. And so if it is part of your strategy, it's an opportunity to look at like, what is my yes rate to this? Right? Like,
Yep.
how many people are saying yes? How many do I even track that? Right? Or I'm just tracking how many I sent 100 emails today because that's how many I can send in a day. Great. If 100 people delete your emails, it doesn't really matter that you sent
Exactly.
100 today.
I would say there's only one. Actually, because I went out for coffee with this guy recently. I said the only one time I ever said yes, where I paid attention to email and responded to email, um, was he was like, "Would you like to come to this event for a free steak lunch at Roof Chris?" Uh,
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly it. Now there was a high level of trust because he worked for IB. He was working for IBM, so there was so I was like, I trust IBM. So it's like, yeah, if that's your offering, yeah, I'll be there. Never bought anything from him; it was too expensive. But you mean? But hey, I bet he. You mean?
Well, you
And
just told a whole bunch of people on LinkedIn about it, so maybe it's doing precisely what he wanted it to do.
well, funny enough, as I said, I had coffee with him about a month or so ago, month and a half ago, because I was sharing the story with him. Say, yeah, I think how we met was because he had this event, and say, yeah, he said, yeah, that's exactly it, because he openly admits that it worked well. But again, he has the budget, but unless you work for a large company selling expensive stuff, I mean, just inviting random people to Ruth Chris for steak lunch is not a feasible marketing strategy.
not, not for me. I don't know about
No, actually, it
like.
wasn't just me. I actually invited my colleague as well. So he paid for two lunches that day.
Well, see, and so actually, this is an interesting piece of the conversation too, because I think from the I'm going to call it old school sales perspective, the non-digital sales efforts. This is something that a lot of people used to do, right? They take their client for lunch, they take them for dinner, they take them golfing.
Yeah,
Like I once, so in my corporate life, I paid for a client to go to New York so he could be a testimonial for us at an event that we were holding. And we paid for his flight, we paid for his food, we paid for tickets to Phantom of the Opera. Like, and like that's not a
nice.
negligible amount of money.
No, probably 10 grand easily.
Yeah, yeah, and like okay, like for like we were doing a product launch and we had a budget and it fit in and we built it into the budget and yada yada. But I mean, I've also been historically at a lot of trade shows to be a sponsor. It costs like $40,000. And then you got to send your booth there. And then you got to send 5 salespeople there and they need flights and they need hotel. And pretty soon this is like a $60,000 investment. And we don't really look at how that's turning into anything. Um, and so when I think about this concept of igniting sales potential, I think there's a big part of the conversation that has to like come down to like checking our ego to some degree and being like, this is what we're spending our money on. Is our money getting us a return?
Drawing back on my HR life back then, my past HR life, and there's a couple things I always said because again, I mean, one of my criticism of some of career fairs was it was useless. Um, I mean, and not to speak poorly of my coworkers, my former coworkers, they would go there and they would count how many applicants they handed out at the career fair. Like they spent a lot of time counting applicant, putting things together. I'm like, who cares? 150, you prepare 150 package. If 150 of them, to your point, what you put ever, if 150 of them all went to crappy applicants, you didn't do your job.
Yeah.
It's useless. Um,
Or if
I said
150 of them went in the recycle bin as soon as
exactly.
they walked away.
I said to my boss one time, and now it didn't work because the company had a policy against buying alcohol, but different story. I said, instead of sending me and paying $500,000 to go to a career fair or go to a trade show, can I just spend all that money on a kegger? I'll invite your target audience. I bet they'll show up. I bet I'll attract the right audience. Again, university. And it would be simple. Or another time, I think we would again do another thing. Again, part of it is we want to know who attended. So again, you have two choices. I can spend $100, $200 on crappy pens and giveaways, or what I'm going to do is I went out and I said, well, instead of that, let's do a draw. Let's go out and buy a really fancy a $200 Bluetooth speaker, because that I bet you people will put their name in.
Hmm.
As soon as they put their name in, thank you very much. You're now in our system, and but to me that I can show ROI on those,
Right.
and I think a lot of it is about what is my objective, and what can I control. And I think a lot of time in sales, we we take the old fashioned passive approach. You put a big ad up, and you hope and pray someone said, "Huh, I wonder what that company does." Or
Right.
maybe I should do that, rather than saying, "Hey, again, for that 60 grand, I wonder can you do a kind of a guerrilla marketing technique? You know, go book a restaurant. Lord knows how much money you can blow on 60 grand of booze at that restaurant, and just go in and say, "Hey, you seems interesting. Hey, do you want to come for dinner?" And actually, I want to actually, what's his name? Oh shoot, I'll quickly search it. But his name again. He has a brilliant idea. This guy read this book, Never Eat Alone, and I can't remember the author of that book at that point. But one thing he taught, and to this day I still remember, is he'll go to conferences, and again he understands human dynamics. Chances are most people go to conferences alone or with a friend or with a coworker that they may or may not enjoy spending time with,
Right.
or they may want some alone time away from that coworker. Um, so he would go and book a private room at a restaurant, 10, 20 people. He doesn't pay for that. He may buy a bottle of wine or something like this, but say, hey, me and a few people are having dinner tonight. Do you want to join us and have some interesting people? So all of a sudden he started building this network of people understanding the idea that people are bored out of their minds, and then he providing that opportunity. It's like, again, we're probably old enough to remember this, and some of our audience may not. Is when we go to get a car fix, and they have TV on. It's an endless loop of commercials. Like, it was just painful, but it worked because it's a captured audience. The audience has nothing better to do than to watch that commercial over and over and over while they wait for their oil change before smartphone was the thing. But to me, it's about understanding the audience. It's about understanding what you're trying to get and how do you connect the two together. And I think I think that's why TV fails, because TV is a very much of a um, big net approach. You mean I spend a lot of money on Super Bowl ads and hope and pray someone actually turn, rather than Google ad. I mean, another one interesting thing is from this company that sells product. I visit their website, and all of a sudden they track me, and I got an email from them that says, "Hey, thanks for checking us out. Would you be interested?" To me, that is understanding, and I bet that costs a lot less money than putting an ad on Super Bowl. Understanding who has shown buying intention and how do I connect the dots for them. And to me, that's the name of the game these days. It's not about this whole passive approach. It's how do you take a proactive approach to reaching out and understanding the problem of your target audience.
Yeah, I love that concept of connecting the dots, especially between sales and marketing, because this is a place where I feel marketing, they opt out,
Yeah,
right? Like, my job is to present dots,
exactly.
not to connect dots. And then that's sales'
Not
job
many
to
people
connect
saw the
dots.
dots.
Right. Yeah. And we'll just measure how many people saw the dots. But if it takes like 8 dots connected to make a sale, then, like, what's the value in presenting one dot?
Exactly.
Or are there things I have this conversation with my clients a lot, because when it comes to marketing, most people think about advertising. So they think about TV, they think about radio, they think about digital ads, and there's so many other things that are much better suited specifically for B2B companies, specifically for sales based companies. Like if you're selling services, consulting services, massages, what have you, where you can like show people, be a demonstration of the activity of connecting the dots instead of just throwing dots. I call it spray and pray.
Yes, exactly.
Throwing dots out to the void and hoping that somebody connects them for themselves.
Yeah, and you gotta talk to the right people. I mean, again, I'm gonna show my age a bit, but there's a very famous Molson Canadian ad. I am Canadian. You remember the famous I am Canadian ad? Once a whackload awards, like they were winning awards everywhere. Worst one of the worst performing ad in. Well, I don't know if it's true, but it was a poorly performing ad for Molson Canadian. Even though it won a lot of award and everyone, it's iconic. It was actually from an ad advertising perspective, it failed. Why? Because it was appealing to the wrong audience. It was appealing to the audience that liked the message but would never be caught dead drinking a Molson Canadian. That's why Molson Canadian went back to um, frankly, 18-year-olds partying up on the sea slope because that is their audience. Haven't made another iconic ad since, but but they needed to talk to the right audience. And I think sometimes, yeah, sometimes the brash approach works, or sometimes it's not going to win you any awards. It's not going to be pretty, but you're able to talk to the right audience and you're connecting with the right audience. And ultimately, who cares? I mean, if I can connect to the right audience who would pay me, who cares if I feel embarrassed with that ad? But it works. And again, I mean, I love that most Canadian ad story because again, great ad, won a lot of award, highly iconic because even Samuel Liu just recently we did it a couple years ago at the Gemini Award. It's Gemini Award or whichever Canadian award it is. But again, Juno Award. I think it was Juno Award. He redid it at the Juno Award. But again, iconic. But people who loved it would never be caught dead drinking Molson Canadian. So who cares if you win a lot of awards for that ad when the people who are liking it, who you're speaking to, doesn't care, isn't connecting.
So true. Okay, I want to expand on this
Yeah.
concept of the right audience for a little bit because from a sales perspective, a lot of times I feel when I receive sales outreach, specifically on LinkedIn, that people assume that everyone can use their help.
Yeah.
Everybody needs 15 to 30 appointments a week and blah. And that those were the two I got today talking about
Yeah, I
how
know.
they can book more appointments for me. I'm like, I would like to see you try with your strategy versus my strategy, but okay, good for you for believing that. There's I'm not the right audience. I am not even close to the right audience. And not only just because, like, do I have capacity to buy? Yes. Do I have a business that fits their profile? Yes. So those are yeses, but I'm still not the right person to buy. So, what are some of the things in terms of those like target audience conversations that we need to have to figure out who are our actual ideal clients?
I mean, unless you're IBM and who can send out random uh, invite a lot of people to lunch at Ruth Chris, most of us have a very um, modest, shall we say, marketing budget and has to be used very effectively. Um, to me, understanding that, and I think when you try to appeal to everyone, you're actually appealing to no one, and and with a very modest, sometimes limited marketing budget, you have to be strategic. Okay. I can only target one group today. My money will only let us target 1 to 2 groups, which is the group that's most likely to succeed. And with that group, then at least I can tailor my message correctly. So for those people who are still potentially still using automation, I'm not against automation because sometimes getting that grunt work out, automation works. Um, but at least with that automation, at least I am sending out a message that will appeal to more of my target audience than just a random message that kind of appeals to no one. So to me, it's very much that case. And I when I write. I I have a couple philosophy whenever I write messages or work with my clients to write messages. On invites, I always believe I always believe there's three elements to a good invite, LinkedIn invite.
Let's hear them.
I like it. Well, first and foremost, I it's about there has to be a commonality. It can be any sort of commonality, but you have to show that there's commonality. Because why am I reaching out? Look, we're both cool. We're both awesome people. Okay, good. We're both awesome people. And then I believe there needs to be an element of flattery. Um, you know, Tracy. We both love headphones because we both wear headphones. And you know what? And based on what I read about you, you are just so awesome because people like to be flattered. And then lastly is there's an ask, but there's only one ask. You only get one ask per message because I don't have time for most people don't have time to have a very I don't I don't have the mental capacity. I'm a goldfish. I I don't have the attention span to go through three or four different asks. No, you might still get through three or four asks, but you got to do that. To your point, you got to do that over multiple
Right.
ask approaches, but get one ask. So to me, that would be it. So a LinkedIn invite message would be, "Hey, this is what we have in common, and from what I can see, you're so awesome. So let's connect." To me, that would be the formula that I always teach people. It's like that become that becomes that whole formula that you approach, and you do it respectfully.
Yeah. Well, and I'm with you on that. And I yeah, like who doesn't like to be flattered? But you have to watch with flattery because if people
Yes,
can tell that it's not genuine,
correct.
then like you still need to the connection and the flattery has to be genuine. So if you're faking it, stop it.
Exactly.
And just use your brain, your mental calories for a moment and say like, why might I actually want to connect with this person? Is it because like sometimes it's just because hey, we're both in Calgary, we're both in marketing, I love connecting with people in the industry, right?
Yep.
Like cool. Or like I've actually had people who are like, I love your pink headphones, we should be connected. And I'm like, you're probably right if you love my pink headphones. And there's we talked about caring earlier on in the show, right? Like this is
Right.
actually connecting with a human because you see them as a
Yes.
human and demonstrate to them that you see them as a human. Like, hey, I saw that you liked my post about blah, blah, blah. Like, I would love to connect if these are the types of conversations that you're having. These are the types of messages that I send to people. And most people, when they're recognized for something, especially something that's meaningful to them, they will say yes because they
Yeah.
want to be connected with like-minded, like-hearted people. And so, Norman, as we come nearing the end of this conversation, I just want to briefly touch on how important, when we're talking about target audiences, whether that's from a marketing or from a sales outreach perspective, how important is energy and vibe versus demographics?
I think both. I think
Or are
both.
they versus? Do we need both? What are
I
your
think you
thoughts?
probably need both. I think demographic. You start off with demographic because energy and vibe doesn't happen until you get to an in person. I mean, our energy, our vibe, that doesn't happen. You can't get that just purely from. Now, speaking of pink headphones, I mean, again, it depends on what sort of persona that you want to put out there in terms of on your LinkedIn profile. I think that also respect, and I can probably do a better job of doing that myself. I sometimes I get busy and have been able to be as much of a out there. But I think sometimes the tone that you put out there is a fun tone, or you just telling BS story. I got. Actually, to be honest, I think I'm not sure something happened on LinkedIn. I'm not quite sure what happened on LinkedIn, but there used to be a whack load of influencer that everyone just loves sharing the crap out of them.
Mm,
There's some people that you swear like these doesn't seem like real people, yet they get like 100,000 shares and 1 million likes. It's like what's happening? And this lady from Jamaica, this HR lady from Jamaica, was telling a story about how she hired this person who showed up late for an interview because this person somehow car broke down, had to run in the rain, came in for soaking wet. So she said, "You know what? I'm going to hire this person because this person is so tenacity, so endurance." And we didn't even go through the interview because I just want to learn that person. It's like, okay, as a hiring manager, I appreciate that. I will always give that person a chance. But to say I'm going to hire this person because this person, just purely on the fact that this person came in soaking wet, and I didn't do a proper interview, makes me qualified. To me, that makes sense. So I kind of pointed out the story to her, and maybe I also took a slight dig at her. Um, ban. But to me, the story
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like I mean, and
Well, and I think this is another thing, right? Like, and I actually wrote a post about this yesterday about how we can't, like, people just like don't want to be challenged, right? And
right,
it's easy enough just to like block somebody on LinkedIn, and but maybe there's something to explore there, right? And somebody looked a little bit deeper into your story than you wanted them to go, but is that bad? Could you learn something? And that's a topic for a different show.
yeah,
But
for
when it
sure,
comes to sharing those things, right? This is a thing like, so literally, I am all about authenticity. I'm
I
about
agree.
showing up my authentic self, people showing up as their authentic selves, me creating space for other people to show up as their authentic selves, even though it's different than me, which it should be if we're being authentic. And there was this guy that I followed that did this whole post about how he sells authenticity, but he doesn't believe in it. And I was like, who? What? And so I blocked him. I was like, I'm not going to follow that guy. That's the wrong kind of energy for me. But I was like, literally, this has become like a marketing tactic, right? People
Yes,
are like faking authenticity because that's a marketing tactic. And this is, I don't believe faking it is ever the fastest way
I
to
agree.
get to, like, especially if you're looking at like creating connections and creating business through sales and marketing processes. Pretending to be something that you're not is just, it's going to take you longer. It's going to make the process longer.
And I completely agree with you. I completely authenticity is that's what it is. Trust, caring, authenticity. I think they are all connected in many ways. Because if you're not authentic, people's not going to trust you. And if people doesn't trust you, people doesn't believe that you actually genuinely care about them. And it's about selling different. Again, I think a lot of people sell, um, and sometimes it's tough. It's a tough thing to tell our clients. Is every client said they're the best at something. You know, if you work with me, I'm really good, unlike everyone else. But
And
they're
everybody's so good at customer service.
exactly. Where and some of my clients get uncomfortable say because I said, well, it's not about being the best at something. It's how are you different
Mhm.
than your competitors. You don't have to be good at everything. You just got to be different, and that becomes that thing. Because I mean, when I go buy a high ticket item, you mean I can't afford the best in everything, but
No.
I can. But there's certain things that I would look for that differentiate one item to another item, and I'm willing to pay more. I'm willing to sacrifice one item for other to buy that thing because to me that's value too. Well, other people might not make that difference. And again, unless you're IBM treating everyone to stake at with Chris, everyone had to pick their battles and decide what they're different at. And I think that's the key thing.
Yeah. And individual salespeople get the opportunity to do that too, I would say. Right? Like, what is the thing that you're best at? What are the thing that the ways you talk to people? What are the ways you reach out to people? What are the ways you do your research that are most effective for you? And my ways are different than your ways, and it doesn't make my ways bad or your ways bad. We
Exactly.
could actually be equally productive
No,
salespeople working our own personal brand into this.
exactly.
Awesome.
That's exactly it. And sometimes it works if one person doesn't work with the other person. Same product.
Right. Yeah. And there's space we need to create for that. So we are coming up to the end of our hour for today because I always tell
Yes.
all my guests we're gonna strive for 45 minutes and then we have to aggressively cut ourselves off at an hour. Um, Norman, can you share before we're finished today? Can you share a little bit about what Bitwide does and how it supports people in igniting sales potential? And where is the best place for people to find you if they are curious about
For
learning more?
sure. So Bitly is we are a sales strategy, sales process organization. We work with companies, small to medium-sized company. A lot of it is about taking a lot of the day-to-day grunt work off the desk of their CEO, founder, because for a lot of them, they as much as they should be selling, they don't want to sell, and this is where we kind of take that opportunity to kind of do that. Put some process in place and put making sure those emails goes out, those calls goes out, those LinkedIn invite goes out, and so we do that on things. So that's really what we do, and we go from strategy all the way to execution for our clients, and making sure that they we help them out and we solve a problem for them, which is sales. Everyone needs more sales, relatively speaking. Okay, for me, I'm highly I'm highly reachable on LinkedIn. I always love engaging with people. Uh, Reach out to me. Speaking of commonality, I mean, if you said I heard I mean, if they say, "Hey, I saw you on Tracy," I would love to. I would love to have that conversation, and I'm more than happy. I take random Zoom meeting with people all the time. If they say, "Hey, do you want to go for coffee?" I like how we did, or do you just want to jump on a call and hey, let's chit chat? I said to me, every interaction is a beautiful interaction, and I get to learn something more as long as they're being genuine with me, and I can assure you, they'll get the genuine Norman as well all the time.
Yes, and this was something that I felt from our connection to begin
Yes.
with, and we had a very long coffee chat,
Yes.
actually in person with coffee. Well, I have tea, and I don't think you had coffee either. I think you
Oh,
had
I didn't
some
have
other
coffee that
kind of
day
tea.
either.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually a coffee chat, but it was an in-person, very good connection chat.
Yes.
And we have the opportunity to do that. So meet people, connect with
Yes.
them, and just
Have fun.
take the pressure of the transaction out until later in the conversation. And who
I
knows?
agree.
Maybe you'll end up on a LinkedIn Live with me.
Exactly.
Because if we're having conversation, you're probably going to end up on a LinkedIn Live with me at some point. Because if I like having conversation with you, I like to make it public. Thank you so much, Norman, and
Thank
for
you,
joining us
Tracy.
today. Thank you, Andrew and Madeline, for being in the chat. I was bad at showing the chats today, but you guys were there. I really appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.
Bye bye.